Even if most products get forgotten by the media after the review period is done, there are a few that stand out. Gadgets that people still ask about months later. Something we get to hold on to as daily drivers, and that we get to see age over time. The Galaxy Z Flip 5 is one of them. The king of flip phones is already due for a refresh, or if you're wondering if it's still worth it to consider nearly a year later, this video is for you. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and it's time for another episode of After the Buzz. I think you can tell a lot about Samsung's target for the Galaxy Z Flip with their marketing. Their ads are full of young people, mostly women, and it's all about joining the flip side, as if this was a reference to the dark side. Yes, that exact same demographic that is completely owned by iPhones was treated to a lot of K-pop celebrities and Sidney Sweeney at the Galaxy Unpacked for a reason. The problem is that I wish I could tell you that most people in Diego's age are buying iPhones for their looks or for some party trick. The reality is that even if Samsung's products also fall within a status symbol category, the way you're seen is also just half the story. In that regard, I do think Samsung did a great job with this phone. Place it on a table anywhere and be ready to get some eyeballs or even questions. Just when I thought that Samsung could not get the design of the Z Flip 3 and 4 any more elegant, this is like the company said, hold my beer. From the flat rails to an outer display that's now complete, to this mint color in my review unit, this phone exudes the exact same elegance I felt back in the Motorola StarTAC days. Even after nearly a year, it's held up great, though I'll admit that I've kept it on a case most of the time and haven't really dropped it. Also, having that flush hinge meant that the inner screen kept far cleaner than its older brothers over time. Did the bigger outer screen make a difference? Well, yes and no. Its much larger folder-like design was like a glass of water in the desert of its tiny predecessor, but I'd lie if I said that it's any more useful. Surely, I loved it for its notifications, a full weather widget, and even my calculator, but that was about it. I didn't do any of the good lock tricks to get this to run full applications, because let's be real, there's no way that they would have worked well anyways. For me, it's more about the quicker glance to things, or an easy reply to a message, or the convenience of the always-on display, but that's about it. I genuinely feel Samsung needs to work more on its functionality for this to be better than just using a larger display. I spent most of my time on the inner display, which then makes this feel like a regular phone. Maybe one of my favorite things about this device is how you get such a flagship panel on a thinner and lighter footprint, as having a phone that bends by design will remove those rigidity concerns. This AMOLED 2X continues to be class-leading in color, saturation, contrast, and brightness. As a result, the experience of viewing content on this device with its dual-firing speakers almost made it feel surreal given how thin it is.
I think you just need to live with that. So open it up and you're greeted by an extra tall 6.9-inch Full HD Plus OLED with a lanky aspect ratio of 22:9.
And sure, I think a lot of it had to do with just how powerful the specs on this phone are since day one. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 has aged like fine wine even a year later. And sure, I did have my concerns about RAM, but this phone held on to it quite well. Double the average storage did come in handy, and I'd even say that all the efficiencies in the architecture matched with the latest connectivity meant that the smaller power pack shouldn't be of concern to anybody. I'd say my overall experience with the Z Flip 5 made this my favorite experience with using a modern flip phone. Finally, a device of this footprint with all-day battery life, which then did a better job than most for phone calls given the added ergonomics of its design, and which had all the chops to hold on to data even in the toughest scenarios, which other phones struggle with. I think a lot of it has to do with just how aggressive Samsung has been about software updates. No, it's not as quick as the Pixel or any of that, but I'd say it's a close second. At this time, the Razr Plus is still stuck on Android 13. Make sure you watch Alex's After the Buzz, while this Z Flip 5 is currently on One UI 6.1 based on Android 14. And then there's the fact that this doesn't just mean the latest version of the operating system, but also full compatibility with Samsung's Galaxy AI features. Everything we saw back with the Galaxy S24 Unpacked is now here, so if your thing is circle to search, go for it. If you're a fan of the new translate features, they're here. Want to record a phone call or then get a transcript for free, it's included, it's really hard to underestimate how much this has rejuvenated this phone, even when it's so close to its refresh. But alright, you know it was coming. This is not the perfect flip phone, or smartphone for that matter. It's actually the Galaxy Z Flip that I've used the least, even if I bought one with the Galaxy exclusive colors with my own money, and really it narrows down to a couple of things. To be honest, the only reason I bought one is because the crazy trade-in deals were just having me pay $100 for this phone with the trade-in, so it made it a no-brainer. If you can find any deal like that, I'd say sure, go for it, because otherwise, I just don't see myself paying $1,000 for this phone. My first problem is that I love to use polarized sunglasses, and this inner screen hates them. Not sure if it's a lesser quality panel than the Z Fold 5, which doesn't have that problem, but I don't really notice a quality issue. It's just extremely annoying to try to use this phone on a typical sunny day. Second is that if we're honest, no person in the targeted demographic is going to give a $1,000 phone a chance to breathe if the cameras aren't great. Sure, you can give me the argument that for this phone to be so thin in order to flip, you need the sensors to be 3 years old. The problem is that for the average consumer, better cameras are more useful than propping this phone on a table for a selfie. It's truly pointless to want to do that if the results aren't something you aspire to show off. During the day, photos were fine. It's hard for any phone to get that wrong because there's enough light for the camera to play around. Still, I did notice certain situations where colors were a tad either muted or when the reds were just overdone. Maybe my biggest pet peeve though is that the megapixels on the primary camera are too limited for us to at least get a 2x telephoto, which would have been great as my favorite kind of photos are street photography, which this phone frankly can't do well. I did notice some improvements in the speed of low light photos, but not necessarily faster than a comparable phone at this price. It does the job, though, with a bit of motion blur sometimes, but clearly the new ISP on the chip is doing some heavy lifting in speeding the process, even if I wouldn't recommend the low light photos from the ultra-wide. Same thing with selfies, regardless if you use the inner or outer cameras. Photos were fine and pretty useful most of the time, even if I wouldn't say they added any sense of uniqueness or character. Video performance from the cameras is then pretty okay. I'm still not a fan of any Samsung phone in how they perform, but this one gets a lot of things right in color and detail with good enough stabilization, though with too much sharpening for my taste. I wish I could tell you that the selfie camera was better than this, but that's sadly not the case, though you could use the outer ones. The colors and dynamic range are there, but not necessarily great, and the rolling shutter with the wobble as I walk is bad. I'm not using this phone for any video-related projects, sadly, and I wish I could say opposite because you have that option to use this flip phone closed for that. To conclude, what can I say? This phone is a beauty on the outside with a beast on the inside, and so many things going for it, but then with a camera system that reminds me of the comic relief characters in the movie. Sure, they're needed for the story, but they provide absolutely zero value in order for you to take them seriously. Just like my Galaxy Z Fold 5 after the buzz, I stand by my belief that this is one of those cases where form matters just as much as function. People will probably give this phone a try once because it flips or folds, but at least the Fold gives you a larger screen when you do. Here, you get, well, a regular phone. The smaller version just fits better in your pocket, but it's not a better phone when you do, so what gives? The least this phone should do is get the regular phone things right in order for the flipping open to be the added value that makes it stand apart, and they could even make it more expensive if they do that. As much as I like this phone visually, I don't love it enough to recommend it after the buzz. Listen, I praise Samsung for continuing to push this form factor for the past 5 generations, but I think more important sacrifices need to be made for people to truly favor the beauty of this phone. Oppo and other competitors are already doing some of this, so I'm hoping we get to see some of that here in the Galaxy Z Flip 6, even if the rumors don't point in that direction. Let me know if you agree with my assessment in the comments down below, and while you're at it, follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me want to love this phone more than ever. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.